Welcome back. In this video we are going to talk about the reduce method. So this is the third transformation method, which is the reduce method. As you will remember, we use the reduce method to essentially boil down all the elements in the array to a single value, and we talk about this example adding up the number in one array, right? So let's try that now with the all movements array. So here let me just write console.log movements, and by adding up all these numbers, so both the deposits and the withdrawals, we end up with the global balance of the account. Basically, let's start using this reduce method here. So here we'll just say, so here I'll just take only the moment, which is this. So moments dot reduce, and then we'll just store this here in the constant. And then here we need the function. In this function here we need the current element and then the index and then the array element. Here we'll just say this here as the accumulator is like a snow. So here accumulator is a snow, and then we'll just, so here what we just did here was reduce all, call this on the movements array, and then the result of this method here will be, as I just said, the global balance of the account. So we call the result balance, and then remember that in this case the balance will be the simply one value, not the entire array. Okay, so the reduce function also gets a callback function. So here we have the callback function here, right? But this function is a little bit different from the other ones, like one in the map for each. So in this callback, the first parameter always here will be the current element of the array, and let's call it current as we did. And the second one here is the index, and the third one here is the entire array. But in this callback function of the reduce method, the first parameter is something called the accumulator. Okay. Okay, the first parameter here will be the accumulator, and then the rest will be the same thing here. Here our accumulator ACC here is an abbreviation of accumulator. So this accumulator is essentially like a snowball that keeps accumulating the value and that we want to return. So in this case of adding all the elements or the number of an array together, that will be the sum. So as we already have written that here, now reduce also loops over the array and then callbacks in each iteration. But now what we will do in each of these iteration, well, since the accumulator is the value that we'll keep adding to, what we are going to do here is to add the current value to the accumulator. So which is here we'll write add accumulator plus current value. Okay, so this works because the accumulator will be the current sum of the previous value. So we'll keep adding this to the accumulator in each iteration of the loop, and finally we need to return this value from the callback. So here we'll just say here return. Okay, so this is how the new accumulator can be used in the next iteration of the loop. So basically in this each loop iteration, we need to update the accumulator. So the current one plus the new current value. So it's like this. We can keep adding to the next iteration. Okay. So this callback function here is the first argument of the reduce method, but the reduce method actually has another. So a second parameter, that is the initial value of the accumulator. So the value that we specify here in this case is going to be the 0, is the initial value of the accumulator in the first loop iteration. So in this example, we'll start counting, or we'll want to say start by adding here the 0, which is, so here we'll write 0, and then down here we'll just console log this. So we'll just say here balance. Okay, so we have one single number. As we run this, see here we got 3840. Here we have one single number. Indeed, everything was boiling down to this one number, and to make even this more clear, let's just log accumulator to the console. So here let me just say console.log. Here let me here we'll do the accumulator. Okay, so when we run this, yeah, as you can see here the output, which is the iteration which we got here, because it is starting here with the 0, and then in the next iteration here you can see 0 plus 200, here it gives the 200, and then this 200 plus 450 it gives 650, and then similarly it goes 650 minus 400, it is the 250 here. It goes all the way to iteration 7, which is 2540 plus 1300. Here it is the 3840, which we got our value here. However, we see the snowball effect of all these values adding up to the one final value, and in the end value it's essentially the accumulator. So this is really how the reduce method works. So for example, instead of here using this 0 as an initial value, if you use here 100, as you can see here, the iteration initially here starting with 0 100, here is 0, right? So here 100 plus 200, which is here the 300, and then 300 plus 450, here it is the 750. So we don't want this, right? So we want it to start with 0, right? So we are just keeping this back to 0 here. So let's do the same thing manually with the for loop. Okay, here we'll write for constant move of moments. So, and then here we need to write this select balance 2. Here we'll just set here to 0. Same way here as we are setting here this 0, because the accumulator value starts here at 0. That is why here we declared here. Here we'll write balance 2 plus or equals to move, and then console.log balance 2. So as we got the same result, and so here you can see this the common pattern that we needed an external variable here, right? So when we want to use the for loop, that's fine, but if you only need one loop, but it starts to become really difficult and then unpractical when you use so many loops for doing many operations. So this method that we have been studying, they completely avoid this external variable, and then simply return the variable or the value that actually write here away. Okay, of course we can write this in a simpler way, so using the arrow function here. So we'll just comment that out. So basically we'll just start writing from the basics, so which is nothing but this only. Okay, constant balance, here we'll just say movements dot reduce, which is of, here we have the accumulator and then the current value, so we don't require this index and then the array here, so I'm not writing that. So in here we use the arrow function, and then here we say accumulator plus current value. Okay, so initially we are setting here this to 0, right? Okay, and then what we'll do is simply console.log balance. So when we run this, as you can see here, we got the same output. So both are the same output here. Okay, So understanding how the reduce method works is really something important, but it's also way more confusing than the other ones. But I'm sure you're well underway of really understanding it. And now that we know how it works, we can actually now also calculate the balance of these movements and then print that balance right here to our application and our user interface. So let's go ahead and do that. So finally we are moving back to our application, so we'll go back here. So after this display movements, so we'll just write our code here. So we'll just say constant calculate display balance. So we are setting here this into function of movements. So in here we'll just write simply constant balance equals to movements dot reduce, which is of the accumulator, and then here the move in this case, and using the arrow function here like we just did, the accumulator plus move, and then initially we want this to start with 0, right? So and then so let me just go this here, and then in this case here when we scroll down up, so this case here, so when we just inspect this, as you can see here we have the balance value, as you can see, which is here getting selected here, balance value. Here the class is the balance value. When we just scroll up here, as you can see here we have the, see here we have the balance value, which we have labeled here as the label balance. It says here the label balance. So basically label is the all the things that we simply want to put some text, right? So let's say here we will say down, so label balance dot text content. So dot text content here equals to, we are setting this balance, and then here we use the euro symbol. So we'll just simply write euro symbol. So here we want to return, so what we'll just say here, calculate display balance of, here we'll just say account 1 dot movements. So when we run this, yeah, here one more arrow, see now it works. See here in our case 3840 euro, which we just written here. So this way here we got our output, and of course these movements here we are going to use will be a form from the account that we logged in the application. So if it is the Jonas that logged in, so it will show the Jonas movements, and if it is the same for the Stevens, so it will just show the Stevens movements, and here the Stevens balance here. And right now we see our balance up here. So this is basically happens the exactly same way we calculated before, so which is here 3840 when we inspected here. Okay, because the movements are indeed are exactly the same. Great, that is beautiful. With this we actually already completed some part of here in the flow chart, as you can see. So let's also keep this one here in handy so that we can keep looking at this. So we are already did calculating the balance and displaying the balance. We did all this in just one function, and we also already have this playing the movements. So indeed we are making some nice progress here, and the rest you see here will be even easier as we go on. And now just to finish this lecture about the reduce, so let me just show you one final example, because we can also do other stuff just doing the adding up values. So this becomes boring at some point, right? So what I want to do here is to get the maximum value of the movements array here. Okay, so let's come down here, and then here let me just say maximum value. Okay, in this case let me just show you. In this case, the result we are looking for here, it is the 3000. Okay, and so for that we also can use reduce, but remember reduce is for boiling down the array just into one single value, but that value can be whatever we want, so it doesn't have always to be a sum. So it could be a multiple or even something completely different like a string or an object. But here we'll just keep working with this number, and but this time we want the maximum number. So let's kind of go manually through this array to determine what the reduce method should do. So let's just start here with this 200. It is the maximum value at this point. We don't know yet because we just started. So let's just save here 200 here mentally as our current maximum, and then move on to the next value which we see here, the 450. So this is greater than our current maximum which was 200. Well, it is greater, and so 450 is now our current maximum, and then minus 400 is of course less than current maximum. So then we move on even further, which is here the 3000, which is greater than our current maximum. Yes, it is, and that becomes our current maximum, and we store this 3000, and then we keep going through the array. As you see, there is no other value greater than 3000. So in the end, our maximum, this was the one, so this 3000. Okay, now all we need to do is essentially translate all what I just said into the code by using the reduce method. So we'll just do that here. So here we'll just declare constant max. Here we'll just say movement dot reduce of accumulator and then move. Okay, here we'll use the again arrow function here. And now this time, what should be the purpose of the accumulator value? So that's always the big question that we have to ask when we use the reduce. So up here, when we wanted to add up all the numbers here, so the purpose of here the accumulator was to keep track of the current sum. So here the accumulator will be the one that keeps track of the current maximum value. So let's just start by writing the logic here in a bigger way so you can understand what is happening. Then I'll simplify it to make one liner function more than one time. Okay, we'll just say here the condition according, so accumulator greater than now, then just simply return accumulator. So we want our stored value here, if it is going to 450, so our 450 value is stored in accumulator, so we want to return that. So that's what we did, and then else if it is not, then return okay. And then here also we just want initially start by calculating here our initial value here by 0, right? So we want our moments, our array of first, which is here index. Okay, index of 0. So here we'll just console.log. Here let me just say max. Now as you can see here, we got our output value 3000, which is correct. So indeed we get the 3000. So we start at 200 in this iteration in the accumulator get greater than the movement. Well, it's not, so return the current movement. Okay, but the first iteration is not that important. It get interesting in the second one. So our accumulator is 200 and then the current movement is at the 450. So this one here is the false again, so we have to return the movement as the new accumulator in the next iteration. All right, so in the next iteration the accumulator is 450 now, and then the current movement here is the minus 400. So here 450 is greater than minus 400, of course it is. So let's say just simply return the accumulator. so it stays the same in the next iteration. So the logic all the way until the end of the array. By this we end up with this maximum value, which is here the 3000. All right, I hope this made sense, and in fact there is a ton of things that we can do with this reduce method. So we always need to think exactly what we want the accumulator and then the current value to be, and then how they should react. Okay, with this we are done with this reduce method.